So I'm here somewhere in Germany. I flew into Hamburg last night, so I had a layover in Barcelona. And then I flew into Hamburg last night. I got into the place I was staying at like 10:30 last night. And it was a hostel called The Generator. And they exist kind of all over the world. There's several in Spain, several here in Germany. There's some in the US. They're kind of all over. But it's basically a hotel that the hotel rooms have 3 bunk beds in them. And then the bathroom it was like broken up into 2 different just water closet stalls that were not unlike, I mean, it really genuinely felt like an outhouse. It was quite an interesting experience. So I got there at 10:30, and there was one other girl there that was already in bed, but nobody else was in bed. Nobody else was even there at all. Most people started rolling in around 1 and 2 in the morning. Some people got in at like 3. I don't know what it is people do at that time. Like, where were they? What were they doing? I have no idea. But anyway, the biggest problem there was that it was so hot. And it was, I think, like, the hotel itself was just hot. There was probably just so many people. But our room was really hot. There was no air conditioning. We opened the windows and we had a fan going, but it was just so unbearably hot. But even at 10:30 when I got there, it was like I was checking into like a club. Like, there were just so many, like, especially like college-age kids, but not just college-age kids, but there were just so many people. Just, that was like they were just barely getting up to start the nightlife. So I walked in and it was noisy and like really loud music playing. It was just really, really loud. And then it got up to, like, my room was on the 3rd floor, and got in, and all the signs say please be quiet after 10 p.m. but there was nobody there. And I did sleep on the top bunk, but it was, of all the bunks that I've had to sleep up top, it was the best. The beds seemed to be the sturdiest, so I didn't have a problem getting up there or sleeping up there. But yeah, just really, really interesting. And then, it was right by the train station in downtown Hamburg, and it was noisy outside, and it just super noisy. So I did not sleep at all. I finally got out of bed at like 5 this morning and just decided to get in my car and turn on the air conditioning and drive around and cool off. Once I was up, I just was up, and so I went and got all my stuff and changed and went and got a cup of coffee and checked out. So I checked out of the hostel like 6 a.m. this morning. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. The hostels that I've stayed at since I've been off the Camino, there have been 3 of them. It has been a very different experience than the hostels I stayed at on the Camino. So the first one I stayed at was when I got back to Porto. I stayed at a hostel there, and my initial perspective was that it wasn't dirty. It was just kind of a little bit more rundown than some of the other ones. I think over COVID, a lot of the hostels along the Camino did some renovating. All of them seemed to, like, every hostel I stayed at there, the beds were covered in this like plastic's probably there's probably plastic, but it had a bed covering, and the pillows are all covered in this really like plastic bed to prevent bed bugs, and so they just seemed clean. And I think they did renovate a lot post COVID. But so yeah, that first hostel I stayed at in Porto, it didn't have that. So I was a little bit more worried about like bed bugs. There weren't any signs of them, but then the other thing is, like, on the Camino, I stayed at these hostels that were really only for pilgrims, and so everybody kind of had a similar rhythm and similar schedule to things. We all kind of got up around 7, got packed and headed out. There was some that would get up at like 6 and head out, and then some that would sleep in, until checkout at 9. For the most part, most people got up between 7 and 8. And then people would get there around, 3, 4 in the afternoon when they opened, and they would hang out, and they'd go explore the cities a little bit, and then get dinner, and then they'd come back, and everybody was basically in bed by 9:30. And that was pretty much the rhythm of the entire Camino. Everybody kind of had the same schedule, the same pace. But that has not been the experience since I've been off the Camino. So that first night in Porto, the lady that was sitting below me, she would talk on her phone really loudly, left her light on until like 3 in the morning, ate food in her bed, which, I mean, that's just like all the hostel rules. They don't eat no food or drink in your beds. But yeah, she just really inconsiderate, and I knew when I very first arrived there that I was not on the Camino anymore when there was rolling luggage instead of the backpacks. But so yeah, and the bunks themselves, like I really like felt like they were gonna just like fall apart at any second. They just, like, you'd climb up to the top bunk and it would just like sway more than I thought it should, and it was noisy, and so every movement, anyone you could feel. So it's just not as nice of a hostel. But they were clean. It was clean. And then I got to Barcelona, and the hostel, I checked in at like 9, I think is when I got, 9 p.m. is when I got to the hostel there. And there were 2 other guys that were there, but everyone else was out clubbing or, at the bar scenes or whatever. I'm not sure where they were. No idea what people do at that time of night. But a guy from Welsh, and he was like 50, and then a kid was like 22 from Turkey. And we did just sit and chat and chit chat while I got ready for bed and climbed up to the top bunk again. And those bunk beds were more like what I would expect to find in like a little kid's room. And there were several times in the night that like I startled myself awake, concerned that I was going to roll off. There was no guardrail on one of the sides, and only like a tiny guardrail on the other side, and it was, I think, mostly just to help you get up. It was just really, really small bunk bed. And yeah, I did almost think that I was gonna like pull it over when I started climbing up the ladder, but so when it came time to turn the light out, I made the Turkish kid get down and turn the lights out. Because the Welsh guy went out. He's like, the bars are open till 1, so I'm headed out. I think he left at like 10:30 or something. But they were nice. We sat and chit-chatted for a little while, and then lights out. And then I got up at like 9 a.m., which was late for me. It was super hot all night. I had a really hard time falling asleep. And so yeah, I got up at 9 a.m., but I was the first person in the entire hostel to like get up. And there were a couple different rooms of bunk beds. And so yeah, I was, again, the rhythm of things. And so I got up and went and got a cup of coffee, but the stores didn't open until like 10 or something. And so then I did that Rick Steves walking tour of Barcelona, which was fantastic. Definitely the best way to explore a city like that, in my opinion. Because I knew the Gaudi stuff, like I knew the the Road of Discord? Like I knew that, I knew I wanted to see it, but I would have just gone and like seen it and been like, that's cool. But I learned so much more by having the audio tour and explaining, some of the symbolism of the buildings and kind of the history, and that, would have taken me a lot of research to find all that information on my own. And then it did take you to some other like kind of more local places. Like I went to a market that was pretty much only for like tourists don't go there, but it was pretty cool. It had everything that you could possibly like literally anything that you could need, like fresh fishes, a lot of fresh fish, fresh produce, that like fresh market. It wasn't like a grocery store where you can go buy boxed cake or anything, like fresh food. So I did buy some really amazing cherries there that were already like cleaned, and like they only put like the ones that didn't have bruises and stuff in the containers, so like I didn't even have to like worry about like checking the cherries before I ate them. Really, really fantastic market. And so yeah, the Rick Steves tour was fantastic. I was hoping to get through there. There are two of them in Barcelona. One of the Eixample, which is the one I did, and one that's a little bit closer to the Mediterranean, which I was hoping to be able to do, and I would have had enough time, except that I left my luggage at the hostel, and the people at the hostel, they have like their lunch break from like 1 to 3 in the afternoon, and so I had to be there before 1 in order to pick up my luggage. And so I just didn't have enough time to do the second walk and get back to the hostel in order to get my luggage. If it hadn't been for that, I would have had a time to do it. But so I really didn't get very much time in Barcelona. I spent the night at this hostel and then did this one walking tour of the Eixample. And I did get to see some amazing things, like the several Gaudi buildings, and the Eixample is completely constructed in the Modernisme architecture, and so it is a really, really neat place to be. Really well designed, really really wide streets that are, because in the times that it was built, the idea was that you'd get all dressed up in your finest stuff and go on these promenades down the streets in your carriages and stuff, and go to all these really fancy stores. And so the streets are really, really, really wide in order to accommodate, fancy rich people and their fancy clothes, being able to show them off. And then the other thing I found interesting about the Eixample is that the intersections are hexagonal, and so the buildings have all been cut off at an angle, and it allows you to see the fronts of the buildings a lot easier rather than it just being a corner, which just has a really neat appeal. So anyway, that was Barcelona. I only got a couple hours there. I absolutely want to go back to Barcelona. There was so much there that I didn't get to see. I didn't get to see the Sagrada Familia, which is Gaudi's piece de resistance. They're still building it. It's been over 100 years, and it's still under construction. It has still not been completed, but it is getting close. I do think that sometime in my lifetime it will be finished, which is amazing. So anyway, I did not get to see that. I did not get to go to any of the Picasso museums, the Dali museums. There's Gaudi had like this really like ritzy area that he like envisioned, that it was supposed to be, I don't know, this whole, I can't remember exactly, like this whole like market and parks and fancy houses and stuff that kind of flopped as that concept, but has been re-envisioned by the city and is now a really nice like city park, and people can go hang out there. And I really wanted to be able to go walk around there. So I really didn't get to explore Barcelona very much at all. I didn't get to go down to the water at all. I think it was in '92 they had either the Olympics or the World Fair. I think it was the Olympics. I don't remember what year. But as a result of whatever festival they were hosting, they built all these man-made beaches along the Mediterranean, and so they've been made into like, there's a boardwalk and there's restaurants and cabanas and stuff all along these man-made beaches. And so I didn't get to explore any of that, and I am really sad about like missing like the Picasso and the Dali museums and stuff. And there's so much around the city that I wanted to be able to see. So someday I will go back to Barcelona, but this wasn't that trip. So anyway, then I got to Hamburg and then stayed at the hostel at the Hamburg last night. And so yeah, just my experiences at the hostels off the Camino have been very, very different. And on the Camino, there was a lot of women that do the Camino. And I'm sure they have the same idea that I had when I did the Camino. So part of the reason I wanted to do the Camino wasn't just for the pilgrimage and wasn't just for the walk, but it was a way for me as a single woman to go out safely and explore the countries. I knew that there were plenty of people around. I knew most of them spoke English, that I would always be able to find accommodations. I'd always be able to find whatever I needed. And so from a safety perspective, as a solo female traveler, it made a lot of sense for me to do something like the Camino. And so I'm sure that that's what other women are thinking as well. But there were a lot of women on the Camino. There were couples. I'd see couples with men, and then there were a couple of like select groups of men that I encountered, and one or two solo travelers. I think most of the men were actually like bicyclists or like cyclists. And my battery died last night when I was talking about the hostels, and I fell asleep before it got enough of a charge to start up again. Anyway, what I was saying was that on the Camino there were mostly women and some couples. There were a couple of groups of men, but for the most part I encountered women. But at the hostels that I have stayed at since then, it has been mostly men. The hostel I stayed at in Barcelona was entirely men. I was the only woman. So just a very, very different experience, very different, everything has been very different at the hostels off the Camino versus those on the Camino. And yeah, they would come in at like 1 and 2 and 3 in the morning, not quietly, turn on the lights, talk to you, like hello people. Anyway, very, very different experience. The hostel in Barcelona, I did not shower. I tried very hard not to even use the restroom. It was not an enjoyable experience from a cleanliness and bathroom facility perspective. The people that were there were very kind, but I was happy to leave it. So anyway, After I was in Barcelona, or no, yeah, I went to Hamburg. I stayed the night in Hamburg at the generator, and I got up and left at like 7 in the morning. I didn't get very far before I started falling asleep, and I didn't want to drive, and so I pulled over into this little residential area and just like climbed into the back seat of the basically 4-door smart car that I'm driving. It's not a smart car, but it is about the same size. And I fell asleep kind of in the back seat, and when I got up, my legs were totally cramped. I almost couldn't get out of the car because like they were just like so cramped up and spasming, and like I had to just sit and like stretch them out on the street before I get back in the car to drive off. And then I went and found like it was like basically like a Walmart in a mall kind of a place, and I wandered around there and just got some cherries and some snacks for my drive. I did find some Haribo frogs, which I have not been able to find at all on my trip here. And I did find them like kind of buried in this bin of other Haribo things, but that's like one of my number one road tripping snacks is Haribo frogs. So anyway, I did find some. And then I got here where I'm staying. I cannot pronounce the name of the city, but there is a castle here, and so I was able to spend the day today and tour the castle and go to the museum and do the audio tour and just wander around the grounds. And it's absolutely a beautiful castle. It was restored a few years ago, like 30 or something years ago. And it's still in the middle of being restored, but they've opened up some of the rooms that are partially restored still to the public to be able to tour around on the tours. But it was a really, really neat castle, and I'm glad that I was able to go there, and I'm really glad that I'm like in this small town and I'm not in a big city. I am not a big city girl, like in any way, not in living there, not in traveling there. I just don't enjoy the hype and the people and being overcrowded and waiting in lines and the traffic. It's just that is not an enjoyable experience for me. So I'm glad that I didn't spend more time in Hamburg, because I had originally planned on spending the whole day in Hamburg yesterday, but I needed to leave that hostel that I was staying at because I couldn't sleep. It was so hot. Anyway, so I'm glad that I'm here. I found this place on Airbnb. I stayed at the same place last night, but in a different room. And when I got here, and I was like, this is great. The room was like 50 euros or something. So that was part of why I picked it, was because it was like one of the cheapest places I could find. And so I messaged the guy and I was like, can I stay another night? He's like, yeah, we have this other room that's a little bit bigger. So you'll have to pay a little bit more, but you can stay. So I booked another night on Airbnb, and I'm staying here again tonight. The room I'm staying in tonight is like a full apartment. It has a living room and a bedroom and this little kitchenette here. It's actually really a cute little place. Like I would live here. And it wasn't that much more than the other like single room I was at last night. So I am glad that I didn't have to go anywhere. That like that's what I was kind of looking for, is like a place that I could kind of just stay for a full day and explore that city for a full day and not be like moving every day after day. Like just to stay in one place. So I stayed here a second night, and I'm really, really glad I did, because I wouldn't have spent the time at the castle and exploring the castle today if I had to leave and go somewhere else. And it's been enjoyable. And so far my take on Germany is it's wonderful. it's certainly a lot cooler than Spain, and so for that, I'm really glad that I came here instead of staying in Spain, or even going, like I was contemplating getting the German rail pass, which actually goes down into Venice, and so I was planning on going to Venice and then picking up the pass there and then taking the train up from Venice to Frankfurt. And I'm really glad that I didn't, because I know that Italy is also very hot in the summertime. And so just from like a climate perspective, like it is so much cooler here in Germany, and I'm really glad that I decided to just come to Germany instead of trying to stay in the southern parts of Europe. So, and then, you know, kind of some of the reviews I've read about Germany, well, and not even read, I watched a video from a woman who is from Munich, who has lived in Ohio for a few years, and so she was kind of just comparing the differences between Germany and the US. And one of the things that she mentioned was that the customer service isn't as good. Like, people tend to be a little bit more snotty and not snotty, but just cold, and just not as kind, I don't know, considerate, I guess. But that has not been my experience here in Germany. Everybody that I have interacted with has been super kind and super friendly and super helpful. The wait staff at the restaurant, the Castle, was much more like what I would expect in the US, where they constantly come and check on you. Are you okay? How's everything tasting? Where in Spain and Portugal, that is, they give you your food and then you don't see them again till the rest of the night, until you either like flag them down, or like I would always go up to the counter because I was tired of waiting, because I never figured out how to flag them down. It feels so aggressive to me. So I just, even though what I was doing was probably more aggressive in their mind, it, like being rude and like yelling at them, like that feels super aggressive. But that's probably the norm thing there. Anyway, I have not had that experience in Germany. And the other thing is and when I was on the Camino, I frequently said that it was the Germans that were always the friendliest. They were always the ones that would come and talk to you and like, where are you from? And like they would have, it was always the Germans that would have these really long like conversations with you. And they always spoke very good English. So yeah, I never had an experience with a German that they were cold, or you mean like that. I just haven't. And maybe like northern Germany is different than southern Germany, I don't know. Yeah, they're all very nice, and as soon as they realize that I don't speak German, they immediately slip into English. They're not even rude about it. In fact, some of them are like excited that they get to speak English, like, oh, I get a chance to speak English. In fact, I was doing my laundry at the laundromat this morning, and this woman, this older woman, she was probably in her 70s, I would imagine, just started talking to me in German, and I was just like, I don't speak German, I'm sorry. And she's like, oh, you speak English. And then she was like excited that she like got to try it out, and she would like talk to me in Germany or in English, and asked me where I was from. I told her I was from the US, and she's like, where in the US? It's like Utah. She's like, oh, 2 boys came to my house. I'm like, yes. That's where I'm from. So just they're all very, very kind and very considerate, very accepting of the fact that I don't speak German. In the restaurant I went to last night, it's like they were trying to figure out what language I did speak. Like they weren't quite sure. They knew I didn't speak German, but they were kind of like, they would just kind of like throw things out there to like see what I did speak. And then when I finally said something in English, they're like, oh, you're English. It's like, yep. And they all seem to speak English and quite well. Like they have conversational skills, and it's not just like, they know a couple of words. The other thing I've noticed about being here in Germany is that I don't know any German. And I thought I didn't know any Spanish, but I did know a little bit. I knew enough, like I knew the numbers, well, 1 through 10 anyway, and I could kind of guess after that what they were saying. You know, and like there were some things that I did know, or I could use like the little bit of French that I did remember, and sort of like kind of intuit what was being said to me. But in Germany, I can't do that at all. I have no idea what they're saying. I can't read anything. Like, nothing looks familiar. I had figured out that the only words I seem to know are all foods, which, you know, is lucky for me because they're all foods that I like. But I know, like, schnitzel, and I know, like, strudel and hefeweizen. So, like, those are all good things. But you know, that's about all I know, and so the language has been a lot more of a struggle from my perspective. But again, everybody here speaks English, and are almost excited that they get an opportunity to speak it. And part of it, I think, that I'm in this small town that's not normally very touristy. The lady at the laundromat this morning, she was like, "Do you have family here?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Do you have friends here?" I was like, "No." She's like, "Why are you here? What are you gonna do when you're here?" And I was like, "Well, I found a cheap room on Airbnb. Like, that's why I'm here, and I'm gonna go to the castle." She's like, "Oh, the castle. Yeah, okay." So yeah, just funny. Like, she was so confused as to why I would come to this city of all the places. But this is far more my speed. I have a slower speed, a slower pace of living. I get really overwhelmed in big crowds and with big people, like big cities. The traffic and the noise, and it's just really overstimulating for me, and so I don't love spending time there. And I think that there's so much to do in those big cities that I really can get more information and more like experience more of the city by watching a documentary on the city, or by watching like a YouTube travel guide on the city, where these travel guides like actually go to the tourist places and go through these tours and take you on them and like know a lot of the history. Like, I get so much more out of watching a YouTube video than I do by going to the city that itself. I just don't feel that like I'm really missing that much by not doing it in person. Like, I don't know. And so to like really experience Germany and the German culture, I think I get that more out in the country and out in like these, you know, smaller cities where, you know, it is more of the locals, and I am getting more of the culture. And so I'm really glad that I came here and I didn't spend any more time in Hamburg. I do have to go back because I have to take the rental car back, but so maybe by the time I've relaxed. Part of the problem is that I've just spent like 20 days on this, you know, 20 plus days on the Camino, and my energy levels are getting drained, and I just need some time to like just stop and like not move constantly, not change hotels constantly, and just stop and be still for a little while. So I'm glad I'm in this smaller town. And then the other thing about Germany is that from a gastronomy perspective, Germany absolutely wins all of my, there's no comparison in my mind. The food has been so amazing here. And granted, I am a meat and potatoes kind of a person, and so it checks all of my boxes for sure. If you are a seafood person, go back to Spain and Portugal, no doubt. But for me, as a meat and potatoes person, Germany is where it's at. And I realized that at both places that I have eaten here, I basically ordered the same thing, but it was delicious at both places. And the first restaurant I ordered, the pork schnitzel, had this like shallot and gooseberry sauce. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And then the second time I ordered the pork schnitzel, it was just more of a traditional pork schnitzel, but both times, like, it was so good. It was exactly what I wanted, which is why I ordered it a second time. And then I do know the word Hefeweizen, so I was able to get, you know, a beer to go along with my dinner. A couple of things that I have found that are fairly universal, Spain, Portugal, Germany, it doesn't really matter, are like cappuccino. Like I can order a cappuccino and they know exactly what that is. That's kind of standard across Europe, I guess, and probably across the globally at this point. Like everybody knows what a cappuccino is. And croissant, like I can say a cappuccino and a croissant and not have to speak the language at all and still get what I want. In Spain and Portugal, café con leche, which was coffee with milk. Here it's milk cafe, but which is basically just a latte. So those are some of the things that are universal. And then also a gin and tonic. Like I've been able to say a gin and tonic at anywhere that I have gone, and they know exactly what it is that I'm asking for. So, you know, from a food perspective, I can order some pretty basic things and get around even though I don't know the language. But yeah, the language is, I don't know any German at all. So tomorrow I'm headed to the coast along the Baltic Sea, in some town that I can't pronounce, to a hotel that I also can't pronounce. And I'm going to be there for 3 nights because Saturday is my 40th birthday. And so I decided that, you know, I was looking at, you know, I Googled like birthdays in Berlin, and they had all these activities that you could go do. And like the more I looked at them, the more overwhelmed I got. And I was just like, none of this, like, I don't want to spend my birthday doing any of this. And that, like, you know, there was like, go to these places and get you free things. And like, it just seemed really overwhelming to me, and not at all what I was looking for on my 40th birthday. Again, I'm just not a big city person. My pace is just so much slower that I just wanted to like stand still for a while and stay in one place and just be peaceful and just recharge for a bit. And that's what I want to do for my 40th birthday. And so I found this resort on the Baltic Sea that I found like the cheapest one I could find. And so I'm going there for 3 days, and I will, you know, just relax and chill. And they have hiking paths, and in fact one of the resorts it's not exactly the one I'm staying at, but it was just right down the road from the one I'm staying at, had like the Way of St. James, which is what the Camino of Santiago is the Way of St. James. So it had like its own little like pilgrimage there on property, which I thought was really interesting. It made me want to look into things like that more. The fact that, you know, they were like boasting like, do the pilgrimage here in Germany, you don't have to go all the way to Spain. So yeah, so there's just these hiking paths and nature walks that I can just do what I want when I want to do it, and go spend some time in nature, and enjoy being along the lake. So get some water as well as, you know, being inland and hiking and stuff. I'll probably take advantage of some of the spa services on my birthday. Normally I'm not really like a big like celebrate my birthday on my birthday kind of a person, but because of this trip and because of where I'm at, I was like, I should do something on my birthday. Like, it doesn't make any sense for me to celebrate next week in Germany. Like, I might as well celebrate on my birthday. And you know, like, my birthday's never really been like a thing, and in fact oftentimes I find it really burdensome to have people celebrate my birthday with me. I don't like to have big parties. I I don't enjoy like throwing myself a big party and having all of my friends come to my big parties. That's not an enjoyable birthday for me. And my birthdays in general, it's not like, you know, I've never been like a big birthday person. Growing up, my birthday was exactly 1 week before my little brother's birthday. My little brother's birthday was on July 1st. And my parents got, you know, their VA checks and the Social Security checks on the 1st of the month. And so my birthday was always celebrated on July 1st with my brother, because that's also happened to be when my parents got paid. And so I'm not used to having, like, I just never really cared about having my birthday be celebrated on my actual birthday. And then after my little brother died, my birthday was celebrated at the dinosaur park in honor of my brother. And it, you know, like that seems like a fairly normal thing to me, but it's also like it's not as though like my birthday brings up like super happy memories. That it's like this, you know, like I don't get like this sense of like amazing like rush or, you know, nostalgia from celebrating my birthday. It's just a day. And so I've never really wanted to celebrate my birthday with other people. I usually actually really dislike having big parties and like having people celebrate my birthday with me. Like I really do. It does make me feel like I'm a burden, like I'm forcing people to do this thing that they wouldn't otherwise do. And so I just really don't like, I've never been a person to like celebrate my birthday with other people. And so to like have my birthday in peace on the coast of the Baltic Sea here in Germany and just do my thing is like the perfect birthday for me. And I'm really grateful that I have been able to have this experience. You know, like the Camino was far from what I would consider a vacation. You know, I guess, I mean, it is. I wasn't working or anything, but it you know, it was a lot of work to hike like I was doing, and it was just, it wasn't stressful mentally, but it was stressful physically. And now I feel like I'm on vacation, and I haven't actually like taken a vacation like this and like gone away and like, I don't know, just done like my thing for almost 7 years. I was counting it up, and so like this is like the first like real vacation I have taken. And then I've taken vacation, like I've taken time off and I have gone places, but I have rarely done both of them together. Usually if I would go somewhere, I would still try to work, so I didn't have to use my vacation time to, you know, while I was there, because I'm not like, I don't know, I'm just not that like adrenaline, like I'm not an adrenaline junkie, so I just don't do a lot of things. So even when I go someplace, I'm usually going someplace for a reason. I'm going someplace to visit family or friends, or I sometimes would take weekend excursions and go to like concerts and stuff, but I really haven't like been on a big vacation in many years. And so I feel like this trip to Germany is like my vacation before I go to India. And I am still very nervous about India, from a culture perspective, from a food perspective, and from like a physical activity perspective, and from a mental perspective. Like it's not only going to be physically demanding, but mentally demanding. I'm going to have to learn all about anatomy and all about the physiology, and how to teach a lit yoga class, like how to construct my yoga classes to like satisfy certain needs, and you know, all the different alternatives to the poses in case you can't do the full pose. Like, what can you do? Like, how do you alter it to suit each person? And so there is a lot of just study that has to go into it, as well as the actual physical activity of it. And so I'm really nervous, and I am really nervous about the food, especially as I'm here, like eating my pork schnitzel and my potatoes. Like, my body is gonna not know how to handle like an immediate change to go vegetarian and Indian food at that, like strictly Indian vegetarian food. Like I'm really nervous about India, but I'll figure it out when I get there. So anyway, that's where I'm at. Oh, and I did decide to not get the train pass and to rent a car. And now that I'm here in this tiny little city and I'm going to this place on the Baltic Sea, I'm really glad that I didn't get the train pass. I would not have been able to do either of those things if I had been stuck to just using a train. There is a train station here, but like it would have just taken me hours and hours and hours to get here with public transportation, where it was only like an hour and a half drive from Hamburg. The rental car itself was only like 150 euros for the 10 days, and I know that like the gas is more expensive, and so I'm probably going to pay, it's probably going to come out as a wash from a cost perspective, the train pass versus renting the car, once I include gas and stuff. But I have a lot more freedom and more flexibility. And the other thing that I get from the car is that I don't have to constantly worry about my luggage, because that was the other thing. Like, if I take the train, then I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with my luggage until I can check into my hotels. If I'm changing hotels every night again, like, I was just kind of getting overwhelmed with all the logistics of the transportation with the train pass. And so this way I can leave my backpack in my car and not have to like carry it everywhere, and I can only bring in what I need when I need it, and I can leave my stuff in the car and not have to worry about it. The crime rate in Germany is very low. In Barcelona, I was very, very nervous about my bag, and I was very, very aware of like my bag at all times, because it is one of the hot spots for pickpockets. It's like not quite as bad as Naples, but or Nepal, Naples, but almost. I was reading or listening to like a tour guide like radio interview of Barcelona, and I guess in Barcelona they don't penalize kids if they get caught pickpocketing. So there's literally no punishment for kids that are pickpocketers. And so what happens is that a lot of kids from all over Europe come to Barcelona to learn how to pickpocket, and then once they hit 18, they go to Italy and to all these other places that are known for pickpocketing. But they start their career in Barcelona because there's literally no punishment for being a pickpocketer in Barcelona. So, and the Las Ramblas, which I was there, I was on Las Ramblas, is like the #1 spot for pickpocketing. So I was very, very aware of that while I was there, and another reason why I left my bag at the hostel, even though part of me wondered how safe it was at the hostel, but it's okay. It was certainly safer there than it would have been with me like walking down the streets of Barcelona. But in Germany, you know, I read an article that like there is some pickpocketing in Berlin and in like these big cities like Hamburg, and they kept saying Berlin, so Berlin seems to be a bigger spot than Munich or Hamburg. But basically out in the country where I'm at, there's like no crime. it just doesn't exist. And so I feel very safe. I'm not worried about like being pickpocketed. I'm just like everyone here is super friendly. That like I've only been here for 2 days, but I could absolutely see myself living here in Germany like very easily. When I flew over Switzerland, my thoughts were that it reminded me of Vermont, but it was like Vermont meets Stepford. Like everything was super pristine and super pristine is the best word. But in Germany, it's not quite that, rigid, not quite that like exacting, and it is more like Vermont. Like everything about it, the culture, the climate, the food, because it's not on the ocean at all, and so like seafood, like there wasn't even any seafood on the menu, even if I had wanted to order it, which I obviously do not. So yeah, everything was much more like Vermont here in Germany. And it is on a big lake, well, the Baltic Sea, which is much bigger than the Lake Champlain, but I still can kind of get that water experience. I was looking at possibly seeing about going sailing while I'm there tomorrow, and I thought I would talk to the hotel itself when I get there and see about some sailing excursions, because I would love to get out on the water. And I missed the sailing in Portugal, so I wasn't able to get that done. But so I still want to go sailing. My name of my channel was Walk Chant Sail, and so I have to figure out how to incorporate sailing somehow into my journey in order to live up to the name of my my channel. And although in Eat, Pray, Love, she didn't expect to fall in love, I should just allow the universe to bring sailing to me, I guess. But some of that you have to you have to do some work a little bit to get to what you want. So anyway, I'm really glad that my original plan was to go to Berlin, spend a couple days in Berlin, and so I would have been in Berlin on my birthday. But I'm really glad I've decided to not do that and go on to this smaller countrysides. It's far more enjoyable to me. I would way rather go to New England and tour the small towns in New England than spend time in New York City, or I would way rather go like on a wine tour in Northern California than Disneyland. Like I'm just a much slower paced person, and I get overstimulated really easily in these big cities, and all of the adrenaline, it's just really, really overwhelming, and I find it really anxiety inducing. So anyway, that's been kind of my trip here in Germany. I have absolutely loved Germany. I was going to talk about the grocery stores. The grocery stores have been a very different experience from what I expected. In Spain and Portugal, they were, smaller versions of the grocery stores in the US, but they would be, a lot of them were like convenience stores with produce and a deli. But they had all the basics and had everything that you needed, and they were on shelves just like I would expect at any of the grocery stores that I've been to in the US. That is not the case here in Germany. They are not on shelves. There are very few shelves, if any. Most of them are basically they've just taken the pallets of the product and they've stacked them up, and so you have to rip open the package of whatever you're buying and just take the one or two that you want, or the whole package. It's been really confusing from that perspective. Or there's bins of things, and so to go get a couple bottles of water, you can't go to the shelf and pull 2 bottles of water off the shelf. You have to go to where all the pallets of water are, and then rip open the plastic wrapping around the bottles, and then take your 2 from there. They're not on shelves. It's just a very different experience. And most of the store is produce and meat and dairy and stuff. There's very few things that are prepackaged. I see very few canned items. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if there are any. I can't even think about the grocery stores. Where would the canned items have even been? I don't know. They've been a little bit disorienting from that perspective, because it's not what I would expect. And so that's been interesting. And I haven't, you know, like, 'cause normally I would try to do like a picnic instead of like eating at the restaurant all the time. Just, you know, from a budgetary perspective, I try to only eat out like once a day. And some days I try not to even do that. I do always have my coffee and croissant in the morning, but in Spain and in Portugal, that was under $2. Here, it's been more like $4. So it is a little bit more expensive there, and the meals have been more expensive. So I could get away with a nice meal in Spain and in Portugal. Some of them were like $10 or €10, and that wasn't even like, you know, the the Pilgrim's menu. You know, and that was just like, the food is just a little bit more cheap there. But here in Germany, like, the meal I had both today and last night came to about €30. You know, they were both nice meals, and so I'm not going to complain about it. You know, the benefit of traveling alone and solo travel is that, like, I only have to pay for me. It's not me and somebody else that I'm having to pay for. So if, like, you know, me and my ex-husband were traveling, you know, that would have been a $60, $70 meal for us to both eat there. So I can kind of get away with having slightly nicer meals by myself and still being very affordable because it's just me, and I'm not paying the price of two people. You know, that doesn't really help with like car rentals and hotels, because those prices are fixed regardless of how many people are with you. But from an activities perspective and a food perspective, I can get more bang for my buck by being a solo traveler. So anyway, that's been my update for Germany. I don't know how often I will post while I'm here in Germany, and when I'm in India. In India, I will be in the same place for 2 full months. It's not like I will be traveling around India. I will be at the yoga school in a pretty intense like yoga training while I'm there. So I don't know how frequently I'll post and like post updates, but you know, I thought I would at least, you know, tell my friends and family where I am and what I'm doing and how I'm doing. I'm doing very well. I do really like Germany. Oh, I did drive on the Autobahn, and my thoughts of the driving on the Autobahn were that it was just like driving on the freeway. It really didn't feel any different than driving on the freeway, and not like gridlock freeway. It's not like I was driving in the inner city, you know, downtown Boston or anything, or, you know, even downtown Salt Lake on the freeways. It was more like the stretch from Nephi to St. George, where the speed limit was like 85 miles an hour, and people are usually pretty respectful about staying on the right side lane and then passing on the left for the most part. I mean, you get those a-holes that I thought my battery was dying, but I think it's actually overheating. But anyway, the Autobahn was really very much like driving on the freeway. Like, I was going like 120, which it really interprets to be like 80 miles an hour. So it is very, very normal, you know. And it was nice that I didn't really have to worry about like how fast I was going. I could just drive at whatever I'm comfortable driving, and I was going faster than a lot of the people there. I passed quite a few people, but I didn't feel like it was like any different than just driving on the freeway. And maybe, you know, 30, even 20 years ago, it would have been a lot different, because the speed limits have changed, you know, so much. You know, when I was getting my driver's license, the freeway speeds were usually like 60, 65, whereas now they've gone up considerably. And so maybe then it would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm going so fast. But now it really is. It just felt like driving on the freeway. So that's my experience with the Autobahn. Yeah, I think that's all. I hope that's all. If it's not, then I will